Let me introduce you to four people. Donald is 67, baby boomer, worked hard his whole life, bought a house in the suburbs back in the 80s, raised a family, and by every visible measure, he had it figured out. For a long time, he genuinely did. Linda is 51, Gen X, 2 kids, a solid career, a car she's proud of, a holiday every year. From the outside, you'd think she was doing great. Jake is 37, millennial, paid off his student loans slowly, watched his friends buy houses he couldn't touch, and spent his weekends on trips and brunches, because honestly, what else was he saving for? And then there's Mia, 23, Gen Z. She's got a TikTok, a side hustle, a Stanley Cup, and she's already 3 months into her investment journey. The most financially aware person in her family's history. 4 people. 4 completely different decades. 4 completely different financial realities. And every single one of them fell into the exact same trap. Not a similar trap. Not a loosely speaking trap. The same trap, just wearing different clothes depending on the decade you were born in. And here's what makes it genuinely hard to see. It never feels like a trap from the inside. It feels like the natural next step. It feels like progress. It feels, in most cases, like the responsible thing to do. Because everyone around you was following the same unwritten rules, and nobody thought to question them. So, let's go through each of them. Because once you see the trap in someone else's story, you'll start to see it in your own. Donald grew up watching his parents rent. They rented their whole lives. And in the post-war era, owning a home wasn't just a financial decision. It was the signal that you'd made it. Stability, status, the dream, wearing a white picket fence. So when Donald got his first decent job and the bank approved him for the biggest mortgage he could qualify for, he took it. Of course he did. That was the move. Everyone around him was making the same one. And in the 80s, it actually made sense. Property was appreciating. That house was genuinely going to be worth more, and it was. Donald's house is worth 4 times what he paid for it. On paper, Donald is wealthy, but here's where it gets complicated. Donald is 67, and most of his net worth is sitting inside 4 walls he lives in. The pension he expected never fully materialized. His company restructured in the 90s. He has savings, but not enough to fund 25 years of retirement, comfortably. And selling the house means leaving the neighborhood he's called home for 40 years. The house wasn't the trap. The belief that the house was the whole plan. That was the trap. Donald spent decades maintaining the signal of wealth while quietly underfunding everything else. The arrival looked real. The foundation underneath it had gaps nobody talked about. Linda's trap was quieter, and in some ways more insidious. Because it didn't feel like one decision. It felt like 100 small, reasonable ones. Every time Linda got a raise, and she got several, her life expanded to match it. Promotion at 32, upgraded the car, hit a new salary bracket at 38, moved to a bigger house. Kids started secondary school, added the overseas holiday. Each individual decision made complete sense. She could afford it. She'd earned it. This is what lifestyle creep looks like from the inside. Not reckless, not careless. Just a life that kept pace with the income. Exactly, almost perfectly, every single time. Despite earning more than either of her parents ever did, her savings rate barely moved. The gap between what came in and what went out stayed almost exactly the same, just at a higher number. At 51, the math for the next decade is tighter than it should be for someone who's been earning well for 20 years. The arrival signal for Gen X was lifestyle, and Linda delivered it, reliably every month on direct debit. Now, Jake. And if you're a millennial watching this, something needs to be said first. The system genuinely moved against your generation in ways that weren't your fault. The 2008 financial crisis hit right when millennials were supposed to be building their foundation. Housing became untouchable. Wages stagnated. The traditional markers of arrival were pushed further and further out of reach. That's real. That matters. But here's the trap millennials walked into. When you can't afford the things that used to signal arrival, you start spending on the things you can afford. For Jake, that meant experiences. Travel, restaurants, concerts, weekends away. And the culture fully backed this. Spend on experiences, not things. Live your life. Every lifestyle brand, every think piece told millennials this was the enlightened approach, that the older generations had it wrong. Jake spent his late 20s and early 30s building memories, genuine ones. But at 37, he has very little invested, no property, and a low-level anxiety about the future that he manages by booking the next trip. The trap was using experiences as a substitute for building assets, and having an entire cultural movement tell you that was wisdom. The arrival signal for millennials became the full passport, the story, and it was marketed so effectively that many never noticed it was still just a costume. And then there's Mia. And Mia is interesting, because Gen Z is the most financially literate generation in history. They grew up watching finance content. They know what an index fund is at 19. They talk about compound interest like it's casual conversation. So you'd think they'd have escaped the trap entirely. Not quite. Mia's version of the trap is the most visible one ever created, because it lives online. The arrival signal for Gen Z isn't a house, or a lifestyle, or a passport full of stamps. It's an aesthetic, the fit, the tech setup, the apartment that looks good on camera, the brands that say, I have taste, I have money, I have arrived, to an audience of thousands. And the cruel twist? Mia is investing. She puts money away each month. She's proud of it, and she should be. That's a real start. But she's also spending significantly more on things whose primary function is how they look on her feed. The Stanley Cup isn't just a cup. It's a prop in a story she's telling about who she is. The trap for Gen Z isn't ignorance, it's performance. They know the right language, but sometimes use it to perform wealth rather than build it. Talking about financial freedom while the spending habits quietly contradict it. Mia isn't doomed, not even close. She's 23 and already ahead of where Jake was at 23. But the trap is there, set and waiting, wearing a ring light and a carefully chosen background. So, 4 people, 4 decades, 1 trap. The people who escaped it did one thing differently. They separated the signal from the substance. They made a quiet decision to look less wealthy than they were, so their actual wealth could grow faster. Kept the older car, stayed in the smaller house a little longer, skipped a few trips, resisted the aesthetic upgrade, and put the difference somewhere that compounded. It's not complicated, but it runs completely against every social instinct we have, which is why even smart, financially aware people fall into it. Every single generation. The rule is simple. Assets first. Lifestyle second. Not forever, just until the assets are doing enough work that the lifestyle is genuinely paid for. Donald, Linda, Jake, Mia. None of them are bad with money. They all just did what their generation told them doing well was supposed to look like, and they prioritized looking arrived over being arrived. So here's the question I want to leave you with. Which version of the trap are you in right now? Is it the house that holds most of what you're worth? The lifestyle that quietly expanded with every pay rise? The experiences that felt like living, but somewhere along the way replaced building? Or the aesthetic that performs wealth without quite creating it? None of those are moral failures. They're signs that you did exactly what your generation told you to do. You followed the unwritten rules. You wore the costume that was handed to you. The only difference between the people who escape the trap and the people who don't is that at some point they noticed it. They named it, and naming it was the first move. So if this hit close to home, that's not a bad thing. That's the beginning of something.